Also, every position in Congress before my tenure were political. And we were talking about mistresses, nephews, precinct workers, I mean, you name it, they were on the payroll. And so at least for courthouse operations, we were able to make it career. We made it fully professional. And to this day, I mean, we're talking, you know, I left the Congress in '97. So 11 years later, you go up there, the private vendors are still in place, and we're talking not being hired as a contractor. They had to pay percentage of gross. So it wasn't our tax dollars creating the restaurants, because again, you had 3 million tourists a year, not creating the gift shops and the restaurants, but literally having private vendors come in, and for the privilege of serving those 14,000 employees and the 3 million visitors, they were paying 3 to 5% of gross back into the Treasury. That's the way you do private business, and that is still intact. Another part is, again, you can open up any Washington Post or go on to any job website, and positions, professional positions on the Hill, people who are delivering the mail, which actually is a private vendor, but people who are maintaining the computers and moving the furniture, all these are now posted as private jobs, and are actually, there's no more patronage. So those changes were made. But those addressed all of those scandals that happened in the early 80s and 90s, which are the post office scandal, the banking scandal, the restaurant scandal, the gift shop scandal, things that put people like, put a number of members basically in Club Fed. And so we got rid of that, but we wanted phase two, which was full transparency, moving even further into the information age, and that was stopped, and they've backslid. Plus, again, members no longer could rape the Treasury, but now they were raping and using the lobbyists. And so the lobbyist abuse is expanded, but at least your tax dollars were not being stuffed into pockets as they were before '94.
If you enjoy these stories, there are many more, unfortunately or fortunately, in the book that are quite eye-opening. How do you think primaries or caucuses have affected the nomination process rather than conventions where the nomination was really decided?
Well, of course, we haven't had a brokered convention again since 1952 when Eisenhower emerged on the Republican side. Every convention on both Republican and Democratic parties since then, basically, there may still have been a delegate hunt. I mean, I was part of the Reagan campaign of '76, and that really didn't play out till some credentials and rules fights on the floor in Kansas City. But the key is that this current cycle is ridiculously compressed. I mean, the whole point of a primary season, primary caucus convention season, because each state obviously does its own thing, and there are trade-offs of doing caucuses versus doing conventions. I remember this goes back to 74 in Wisconsin, the Republican Party of Wisconsin, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, Republicans had always done conventions, Democrats had already just done primaries to pick their governor candidate, and both chose to change the other way because they wanted to build the party. So the grass is always greener as to which process is really better. But the whole point of a presidential cycle is for people to truly understand who the candidates are, have the candidates test ideas, test themselves, and have the voters really scrutinize them, have the media really scrutinize them over a long period. The problem with this cycle is, number one, it's all squashed into about 6 weeks, and so you get into you have basically crowd mentalities going on. But part of it is that forced all of the efforts to happen last year. How many people were really watching what was going on during most of '07? These were battles fought mostly among fundraisers. Mostly, I mean, there are some candidates who probably know the names of the makeup people at CNN studios more than they know local party officials. Is that really what we want? We have, I mean, this has become a performance art to an extreme. And this compressed primary season, I think, is going to be something scholars are going to be looking at for years, and I think they're going to all realize this has not served this country well. And so we definitely need to go back to an elongated process in the actual election year and to shorten the process running up to that election.
As a pick-me-up, we can all go to Blockbuster and rent Mr. Smith Goes to Washington just to feel like there are still some good things going on. And I will tell you that Scott was very complimentary of a number of people in the book and in the conversations that we've had, so you need to balance that. A couple of last questions that I want to tie together. So based on your major concerns, when do we all overthrow the government as it exists now and start over? And secondly, why don't you run for office? 4 years in your cell.
Right. Okay, first of all, Vicki has a must-shoot policy in case if I ever move toward a candidate filing page. But the part of it is also that both my wife and I have been community activists for many, many years. And again, in the book I talk about that I started my political career in 1970 when I was still in high school doing organizing for Earth Day back in 1970. And remember, for those of you that remember that period, it was talking about think globally, act locally. And that's really what I take to heart. I think we can do an awful lot more at the local level. We can get the right people on the school boards. We can get the right people running our counties and our municipalities. We can get the right people in the legislature, because those are people that are literally our neighbors. We can eyeball them. We know them. Up in West Virginia, we've run 30 candidates now since 1997. We've won 26 of those campaigns. And they are a third nonpartisan, like school boards and a few municipals. A third of them are Democrats and a third of them are Republican. And all of them are first-time candidates. These are people who literally step forward and say, I'm a local businessman, I'm a retiree, I'm a housewife, I'm an educator, and I think I can make a difference. And in many cases, they really have. We've actually made reforms happen as we've taken over the local government, the local towns, and the school board. And that's really where it's all about. I mean, America is a federalist system. That means that government is best when it is closest to the people. I mean, one of the problems we've had with both parties is they've torn up the 10th Amendment. They have started at the national level with everything. We've got to reverse that and bring it back down to the level where America was really founded. I mean, America became America in the small, I mean, sure, Philadelphia, the Continental Congress, but before that it was the House of Burgesses. It was the local communities in Massachusetts and other places in the colonies where people learned self-government at the local level. And that's also what it's all about. There is no Republican or Democrat way to plow snow or to run a sewer plant. And that's where people come together as a true community, not as ideologues, but truly as citizens who are trying to get things done for their fellow citizens. And we've lost sight of that. We've got to come back to it.
Thank you, Scott. He will be around for questions afterwards. Please give him a fine time.